Hey everyone, it's Wednesday. It's actually midday today, and I'm doing the Pam Chat midday because I have some time before I go to the airport for my flight to Arizona. Now, I was actually supposed to go to Arizona last night, but something went wrong with the ticket and there was a snafu. So instead, I'm going tonight. I'm going to finally get to meet my new family member who was born yesterday. Her name is Violet. She's 7 pounds, 2 ounces. I can't wait to meet her. My cousin had a little girl. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And even though Arizona is not known for snow during the holidays, it's just going to be great to be in a household full of children because I really think that that makes the holidays really super special. I'm going to make my Christmas cookies with them. I'm going to do a lot of cooking. I'm going to do a lot of, well, hopefully not too much shopping. But just hanging around with family is really what the holidays is all about, and I'm really excited to do that. So I am flying out tonight. Last night, as many of you know, there was a election at the Miami-Dade DEC for a replacement state committee man. The person who won that election is Stephen Battelle. Now, you all know that I supported Dwight Bullard for that position. I still think he is a great guy with a wonderful future. But I don't want to jump to conclusions about Stephen Battelle. I've seen a lot of things on social media. Some positives, a lot of attacking stuff, and I just want to make clear to people that I do not believe that being wealthy is a qualifier for the positions that we need to fill and for the leadership that we have, the leadership gap that we have. Being wealthy doesn't make you qualified. But then again, being wealthy doesn't make you disqualified either. And I think we've got to be really careful about going to the extreme of demonizing anybody who's wealthy. That isn't really who we are as Democrats. We're not supposed to be just demonizing people just because we can. So it remains to be seen what his platform is and what he's going to run on if he's planning to run for FDP chair. I'm going to keep an open mind. I know Alan Clendenin, a friend of mine, is also running. I know there's some others out there who are running for FDP chair. My ask of us Democrats is to use a standard by which we measure these candidates, and that standard ought to be, does this person have both a vision for where the party ought to be going and the demonstrable management skill to actually pull it off? A lot of people have vision and have no follow-through. A lot of people have plenty of workmanship but don't think big and don't have good ideas. So what we need in the future is someone who has both of those traits, vision and management skill, and the ability to think outside the box, because what we've been doing has not been successful. I said it in my last Pam Chat, this club structure is great for getting Democrats engaged with each other and talking about issues and so on, but it's not really great to get the infrastructure necessary to help candidates win, and that's really the mission and the purpose of the FDP. And I want to talk a little bit more about the mission of the FDP because I think there's some things that we don't do that probably we need to be doing. One of the things that I found really frustrating when I ran for office was that every candidate has to kind of recreate the wheel for themselves, be it in PR staff and social media staff and fundraising staff and management and all of that. And that's fine, to the extent that it is, but it also is very much a duplication of effort. Every candidate not only has to create that infrastructure, but also has to have the money to create that infrastructure, and they go hit up all of our donors, and so all of the donors out there get hit up by pretty much all the candidates. This is not necessarily a good way of using our resources, and it's something that ought to be thought through. Wouldn't it be great if the Florida Democratic Party actually had real PR staff on staff that could go and help candidates market themselves and give them really good connections? Those are things that would be great for a candidate to say, hey, all of the media connections that you need, you can get through the FDP. Wouldn't it be great if they said, hey, we have some really great resources for you in terms of social media and how you set up a social media presence. We have some resources for you. We can help you do that. We don't really have that. And I'm not even talking about primaries or general election. We just don't have it at all. And that's something that I think the Florida Democratic Party ought to have. I also think that we ought to have a permanent year-round voter engagement program that helps to get out our message and where we are on the issues, and helps to start build those relationships, especially in small and rural communities and in urban communities where we tend to only show up around election time. That's not necessarily a good strategy to get people to truly believe in our message. I think that we need to have a permanent infrastructure that does that. To some extent, that's what the clubs and caucuses are supposed to do, but they're not really given the resources or the leadership to do that effectively. A lot of that, like I said, a lot of that club structure is social. People hang out with each other and then they see each other once a month, but they're not really tasked with getting out in the community on a regular basis. Many of our club members do in other capacities. They're members of Kiwanis and they're members of, they're Girl Scouts of America, whatever. They do all these other things, but there isn't a programmatic thing that puts all of that together and gets it clear and gets it staffed permanently to do that. And I think that's something we absolutely need to do. The other thing I'd like to talk about is about the Democratic brand. We don't really have a Democratic brand. And I think that, we have clear things that we stand for. And there are things that we can all agree on, right? But the Republicans are really, really good at branding, not just themselves, but they're really good at branding us. So to a conservative voter, all you have to use is the word liberal, and that person will automatically completely shut down and not listen to anything that the candidate says, because the word liberal has been built into a brand, into a moniker that is used by conservative pundits and talking heads to put our kind of candidates in a complete box. And then I think we try to push back against that by using the word progressive, but I don't think progressive means the same thing to all people. I mean, there are people who say that progressive can only be what Bernie Sanders said it was. There are people who say, well, progressive is anybody who wants to see progress on certain key issues like the environment or on social justice. There are some people who say all Democrats are by definition progressive. Well, if it's ambiguous to us, it's hard to see how it would be clear to voters. And I'm not even sure progressive is the right word to use. I am not a marketing professional, okay? But there are people who are. I'm not a branding professional. But there are people who are, and I'm trying to figure out why we haven't engaged those people to come up with a clear brand that we can start to put out in a unified and thematic way. Every candidate who's running as a Democrat ought to be able to say, I am a part of this theme. I am building this narrative for our party, for our platform, and for where we want to go. And that didn't happen in this last election. Every candidate was kind of on their own, which is okay, I suppose, but it wasn't super successful. And I think that what would be great is if we did have a common theme, a common thread that put us all together, especially in the general, that said, hey, this is who we are. This is all of us are working cohesively to move these certain things. And not only are we moving these certain things, but we're moving these certain things that are important to you. And I think that that's something that's really important. A lot of what the disconnect happened in this last election was that there were a lot of voters who felt like whatever it was that the Democratic candidates were talking about, it wasn't the things that were really germane to them. Now, some people break that down into, well, we focus too much on social issues, or we focus too much on racial issues, or we focus too much on this, that, and the other thing. I think that it's a mistake to say that we can figure that out just from where we sit. I think the better process would be to start asking these people who voted for Barack Obama but didn't show up this time, or who felt really disgusted about the entire process. I mean, I have a feeling that some of them felt they didn't need to show up because the polls said that Hillary was so far ahead that they didn't need to show up. They bought the polls too. But whatever their reason, I don't think we actually know. I would love to see us take the time to start asking people why and what caused them to stay home. If they didn't believe in Hillary Clinton, why? And if they didn't believe, because Hillary Clinton was not the only person who was advancing proposals and a platform. Every candidate theoretically was doing that. So if none of our candidates resonated with these people, then that's something seriously wrong with us. Seriously wrong with us. So I think we need to take some time to figure that out. And once we do, we need to come together with a theme and a brand for 2018. Every Democrat who wants to run as a Democrat ought to buy into that theme and that brand. That's not to say that they could only talk about those things, but at minimum, they should be reinforcing those things. Because I think that would help us to say, hey, we are really moving something forward. And everybody who hears us and sees us knows, yep, that's the team I want to be with. If we can do that, I think we have a real shot at making a big difference in 2018. Now, those of you who've been watching me on social media know that I kind of got into a little tiff over anointing of candidates in primaries. That is a serious problem in our party. And it's kind of ironic. I'll get to my point of irony in a minute, but in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, the party has decided that from the DNC level and also down to the state level, that it had certain people in mind that it was going to recruit for certain roles. Now, I made clear that I don't have a problem with the party recruiting people to run in races where no other Democrat is running or is not interested in running. I think that's exactly what we need to do, is recruit someone who's from the community, who has, a good credibility, and give them the help they need to run against a Republican. I have no problems with that whatsoever. The problem comes when they recruit people for seats that have lots of Democrats running, right? That's not recruiting anymore. That's just picking and choosing someone you want to back in a primary. And that is a very significant problem because it delegitimizes the primary process altogether. Theoretically, a primary is supposed to be a process which everybody kind of makes their case to the voters, and the voters choose which is the candidate who is best, who's most likely to win, or whom they like the most. That process does not require party intercession. It just doesn't. If you're a candidate and you put your case forward and you don't win the primary, okay, you didn't win the primary. You could have maybe been stronger in your public speaking. Maybe you could have been stronger in your fundraising. Maybe you could be stronger in your, whatever. But if the only reason you lose is because the party is weighting the scales for your opponent, then that delegitimizes that outcome altogether. Not only that, it alienates people and it alienates their supporters. This view that the party was in on it for one candidate is so infuriating to voters that it had a significant impact in the general election. It was impactful for Hillary. It was impactful for the people in our Senate race. It was impactful because people don't like being told, hey, yes, this is your guy, but we don't like your guy, so your support of him doesn't matter. It's only the ones that we like that matter. Again, if the party is hell-bent on doing this, stop having primaries, because otherwise they're a joke. I say this makes no sense. And in the social media sphere, I got into quite a little bit of debate with somebody saying, well, we have to do that because, the candidates that we're recruiting, the first thing they ask is, what you gonna do for me? Hey, if a candidate says, I'm not interested in running unless you do all the blocking and tackling, you push out all of my competitors, you fundraise for me, and you make this easy for me, then that is probably someone who doesn't have the stones to do the job in the first place. We ought not be pushing people who have no courage to compete. Because what happens is that eventually they will have to compete against the Republican. And if they have been cleared the decks and gotten an easy path in the primary, quite often they fall on their face in the general election. That's precisely what happened. And that is not good. That is not good. Every person who enters a primary ought to be willing to compete and should be willing to compete fairly. Anybody who enters into a contested primary should be willing to debate. Anybody who enters into a contested primary ought to be willing to have candidate forums. If you're not willing to do that, not only are you not a good candidate, you're not a good Democrat. And that ought to be visible too. So that is my view. Anybody who wants to run for governor, run. Anybody who wants to run for senator, run. If you want to run for Congress, run and compete. And the best competitor should emerge from that. But if you are not even willing to compete unless everything is done for you, then you're a candy ass and you don't belong in that job in the first place. Enough about that. The last thing I want to talk about is where we go in terms of preparing for 2018. There are some fundamental things that we need to do to prepare for 2018. And one of those things is to figure out, how do we fundraise in a way that doesn't inherently pull away from our message? I know that Bernie Sanders was very, very successful at raising through small contributions. And I know there are other candidates who did the same. I think we should take some time as a party and as candidates to look at that and go, okay, how can we replicate that? Because I think People who feel like there's a large movement of small donations feel that there are a lot of people invested in the process. We need to take that up too. I think that there is a lot to be learned from Bernie Sanders and others who were able to fundraise in small donations for that to be a big component of how the Florida Democratic Party is funded. But before that can be successful, I think we have to prove that the Democratic Party is structured in a way that that money is used to positive end. I think that's really, really important. And I look forward for our new leaders to take that up as a key issue to getting us ready for 2018. I, for one, am not going to be watching the inauguration. I'm not interested in doing that. And I'm going to continue to find whatever ways I can to make clear that we're part of the resistance. And what I'm resisting is not just a person, but the things that this person is trying to do. And time will tell exactly what that all looks like. For those of you who are worried about it and are nervous about it and feel a lot of anxiety about it, here's what I got to say. There's more of us who believe in the Constitution, who believe in civil rights, who believe in what is right and wrong, than there are those who are easily bamboozled by what is wrong. And we need to make sure that we're willing to engage people, that we're willing to continue to be visible, that we stand up and fight, that we protest, that we challenge in every conceivable way that we can. And sometimes some forms of challenge are more effective than others. Okay, I accept that. Some things work, some things don't work. But don't ever give up. Don't ever give up, because this country is absolutely, positively worth fighting for. And I'm going to do my part in that, however I can find a lane to do it. I wish you all an incredibly wonderful holiday. It's going to be a different holiday because we know that our country faces some significant challenges in the future. But we really do have the right of the issues. We really do have people who are incredibly good-spirited and incredibly smart. We really do have tremendous energy in our young people and our millennials and our Gen Zers. They have so many good ideas. Let's make sure that we are listening to them rather than pushing them out. Let's make sure that we're making a welcome place for newcomers and new ideas. Our structure is extremely rigid, and I think we're going to be challenged if we don't find a way to loosen it up. And we have to decide what it is that really binds us together and focus on those things rather than spending all of our energy trying to define who is part of the group and who's not. Because that doesn't advance the ball. That doesn't get us where we need to go. The broader our coalition, the more successful it's going to be. So my challenge to you in 2017 is don't look for the people who agree with you on everything. Look for the people who agree with you on something and work with those people. It's how we're going to take our country back. God bless you. Have a wonderful holiday and have a happy 2017. Bye.